So now you can. Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of the city of University Place, and it's my pleasure to convene the May 16th, 2022 University Place City Council meeting and have that come to order. With that, we'll start with our roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming, present.
Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi, here.
Mayor Pro Tem
I don't know
Figueroa.
what that's for.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, present.
Mayor Worthington.
And Mayor Worthington present.
You have a quorum, Mayor.
Excellent, thank you. And with that, Councilmember Belisi, would you be kind enough to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Can you please stand? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of
States of
America
America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And it brings us to the point in the evening when the agenda is up for approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa makes a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. And do we have any objections to the approval of the agenda this evening? Any objections? If not, the agenda stands as distributed. And that brings us to presentations. And this evening we are honored to have with us the entire delegation from the 28th District after a busy session, and wanted to get a report about what's been going on and the various activities that we've had underway and how that is, it will be affecting the University Place community and other members of the 28th District. Senator Twana Nobles is here, and Senator, would you like to start with that process? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Worthington, and thank you to Mayor Worthington, and thank you to all of the council members for having us tonight. I'm Senator Twana Nobles. Completed my second session this year as the senator for the 28th, and this year I sponsored and championed some really important pieces of legislation. My focus was on youth and families and trying to find ways to support them. And the first bill that I want to share is what we call the Diaper Need Act. And so for community members in our district and across the state who receive TANF benefits, they will soon see an increase in those TANF benefits. Our hope is that it will help folks to better afford necessities for their children who are under 3 years old, things like diapers and formula, other essentials for their small children. So we're really excited to see that increase in TANF grant benefits. I also worked on a bill that would increase college affordability for our military members and veterans. Pretty much this bill will help to more easily establish residency for those named members so that they can access higher education opportunities also easier. There are some gaps and challenges for obtaining residency for some of our veterans and some of their family members, and we want to make sure we're always doing what we can to help our community members who have served our country and their families to access education, to be able to, earn a higher wage. One thing that I have worked on twice now is serving our service members at food banks, and it breaks my heart every single time that we are organizing food banks for hundreds of only service members from right here in our community, and to see them drive through and have to get, bags of food. I just feel like there's more that we should be doing to help our service members to access greater opportunities, to access better wages, and just simply, more things that we can do to help them to access childcare, to help them to gain access to other jobs and easily, transfer their degrees and experiences to be able to find gainful employment in our state. And so this bill is just one way that I'm trying to make sure that I'm consistently thinking about our military community here in the 28th. I also helped to champion a bill that we call doulas, that we're calling doulas for all. And this bill will allow for voluntary certification for birth doulas so that they can provide culturally congruent care to Medicaid eligible families. In my day job, I serve as the president and CEO of the Tacoma Urban League, and I started our doula program at the Urban League. And what we know is we use many of our funds to offset the cost for doula services so that our lowest income community members can also receive support during the birthing process. And so this bill will ensure that our Medicaid eligible families can have the experience of having a birth doula if they choose that option. And I also worked on a bill with Senator Lovett, and this bill will allow campaign funds to be used for child care. And again, these are campaign funds, and it's campaign season now. This is filing week, but these are campaign funds that candidates and their teams are raising. These are not dollars coming from the state. And while the PDC and other campaign statutes allow for the use of campaign funds for child care, we wanted to get that in state law and solidify it so more folks can run for office and rest assured that the money that they're raising, that they use to pay for venues or pay for food or pay for signs or whatever else they want to do during their campaign, they can also use those funds for child care and dependent care expenses that they incur so that we can actually build a more representative democracy. Another bill that was included in the budget, but we need to do more work on it, and so this one has not passed yet, but I'm really interested in providing all of our youth experiencing foster care who are interested with financial education and support. We want to set up bank accounts and start the financial literacy and savings process and wealth creation process for our youth experiencing foster care. That is a near and dear issue to me. I experienced foster care as a young person and got to participate in independent living classes and transitional living classes that taught me how to budget and pay bills and prepare for life. And, it is such a blessing now that I get to be a state senator and work on issues and legislation that really get to positively impact the lives of our youth who are experiencing foster care. So thankfully, our budget chair has allocated us some funds to start doing some research on how many students are we talking about and which financial institutions will we be able to work with. So we're going to do some more studying on this issue, and then hopefully in future sessions, we can actually pass this bill and get those bank accounts set up for our youth experiencing foster care. I also had several operating and capital budget requests. I won't go through them all, but excited that $100,000 came to University Place for sewer and water projects, and $50,000 went to the Titlow Park Hidden Beach Bridge replacement for planning. Lots of other funds utilized across the district for affordable housing project in Tillicum, Stillicum electric charging stations, money to the old Fort Lake sub-area environmental remediation for housing in DuPont, some other environmental improvements for turtles at Nest Hill in the Woodland Park Zoo's Western Pond Turtle Recovery Project. And so just excited about many of those funding opportunities. And I've been in constant communication with the city of University Place about just kind of safe routes to schools. How can we improve lighting here in our district for our students and make sure that as they're walking to school and on our sidewalks and as cars are traveling in the morning or during busy times when our students are also trying to get to school, that we have the safest routes for our students to be able to do so. And then lots of other operating requests for things like our diaper banks, some perinatal support warm line, And so this is so folks who can call in and get peer support and resources if they are a new or expecting parent, or even if they're experiencing postpartum depression. Some parts to our outdoor and recreation programs, expanding the Emerging Leaders Program, and some funding for a military veteran student residency work group that goes alongside that residency bill that we passed this year. I serve in a transportation committee and have been working with my legislative assistant to get as many of our grants out to cities in the district to make sure that you all can apply. And I know University Place has eagerly taken advantage of those opportunities. We also have tried to make sure that federal opportunities that can improve or help to make improvements in our districts have also been shared out to cities like University Place. So it's just been a really great year, I think, to focus on large issues such as crime and increasing wages, making sure that we're consistently thinking of innovative ways to address public safety. We've worked really hard too on trying to help Washingtonians just to recover from this pandemic and continue to find employment and access to healthcare, doing everything that we can to reduce poverty and reduce homelessness in our community, helping community members to gain or regain financial stability. So I'm just really proud of the hard work of the legislature. There is so much that I can share, but this is a shared time with my seatmates here, and I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to share their incredible work. I will say that for folks who don't know, I serve on several committees. I serve on the Early Learning and K-12 committee as a co-chair. I also serve on Higher Education and Workforce Development as a co-chair. I serve on the Transportation Committee and Behavioral Health Subcommittee, and then get to participate on several other committees that we're assigned to in the legislature, like the Joint Commission on Military and Veteran Affairs. I also am a part of the Maternal and Child Health cohort with the National Council of State Legislatures, and have several work groups that focus on Black homeownership or parks and recreation. It's been just a joy to serve our community and to serve this district and to work in partnership with the University Place City Council and leadership. And residents, quite frankly. And so I just look forward to next session and the different visits that I'll get to participate in and tours I'll get to participate in this interim. But I'll put a pin in it there. And just again, thank you for giving me time to talk about some of the work that I got to participate in partnership with my peers and colleagues. And I will turn it over to whomever is next.
Very good. Well, thank you, Senator Nobles. Appreciate that. And I think my colleagues may have some questions or comments. What I'd like to do is complete comments from the 28th District representatives, and then we can turn to questions if that can work for us. So, all right. And with that, Representative Mari Levitt, Representative Levitt, do you have some comments you would like to add?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. To the Senator for all the great work, and I'll try to focus and touch on some things that haven't been mentioned. And we really, this past session, just for some numbers of interest, it was a 60-day short session and had a little over 1,000 bills introduced across the way, and a little over 300 were signed into law. So, there's a lot of effort that goes into that 1/3 to get that moving, and really focused on strengthening the economy in Washington and bringing costs down. So I'll focus a little bit on first small businesses. But before I do that, I just want to give a broad sweep overview, because I know, from a city perspective, you're probably going to want to know, okay, so what did you do for cities across the state? So let me just give some just quick snippets of that. There were some really important, I think, work done for giving cities some dollars that will be grants for cities as they go into growth management work that we know is going to beginning across the state. Quite a bit was invested into rental assistance, utility assistance, and the landlord mitigation funds to invest, because we know that many of our residents across the state need that. So very grateful to the City of University Place and Pierce County, your partner, to get those dollars out to individuals and to landlords. There was some money put in, approximately $75 million across the state, for those cities who are interested in taking a look at some of their zoning laws as it relates to multiplex, duplex, triplex, ADUs, et cetera, who want to take a look at some of those policies. There's some money invested for grants to be able to do that. And then finally, there's maybe a little interest bill to perhaps only cities, but I think University Place may be interested in House Bill 1329, which allows cities to determine how Open Public Meetings Act meetings will be held in local declared emergencies. Right now, it needs to be a state declared emergency. So this bill allows local jurisdictions, for example, if there's a county in eastern Washington who's ravaged by wildfires and may need to move to a hybrid kind of setting or remote council meetings, they'll have an opportunity locally to make some of those decisions. So that's just kind of some broad sweep. But let me talk a little bit about small businesses, because we're also grateful for our small businesses in University Place and certainly across the district, and really worked hard to bring some of those costs down for our small businesses, from helping our hospitality association and our hospitality businesses get some local dollars to make sure that they are taken care of at $100 million. We funded small businesses for the arts, heritage, and cultural organizations. We know we have those in University Place and across our county. It was really important that those two didn't suffer and had opportunities. Focused on, if you're a establishment who serves alcohol, that those liquor license fees, which can be incredibly expensive for a small restaurant or entrepreneur, that those fees are lowered and impacted. And then I think most importantly, in Senate Bill 5980, really took a look at the business and occupation tax. As you know, and we hear from small businesses across University Place and across our county and certainly across our state that is the bane of their existence. And it's a unfair tax structure, and so made it possible so that several of our small businesses and the smallest among the small businesses will have opportunities, and in fact many of them won't file, and extend some of those opportunities out. And so that was really important to take care of our small businesses. And then a fun one in terms of, and it certainly benefits Pierce County because we have local film operators and film companies in Pierce County, that expands the film work and giving tax credits to our film companies across our state to be able to compete. And we know that there's a lot of revenue in businesses and tourist dollars that are brought in as a result of those efforts. So I wanted to focus on that. A little bit about workforce development that I think is really important to highlight. As we know, there's a workforce shortage in several different areas, and focusing on workforce development was a key priority to make sure that we're ensuring that our nurses, the shortage of nursing staff that we have is taken care of, both in training and expanding out those workforce opportunities and clinic opportunities to be able to do that, in addition to providing incentives and some loan deferment programs for those who are going into the healthcare fields and nursing fields in particular, to be able to choose that profession and serve in areas where it's really difficult to find folks. On cybersecurity, we know that there are 13,000 jobs across Washington state that are ready to be filled by trained workers, and we just don't have the trained workforce. So we invested significantly in our community and technical colleges and also in our institutions, our post-secondary education institutions, to ensure that we're ramping up those training programs and being able to focus on that, which we know was incredibly important to be able to do, in addition to other wraparound workforce development opportunities for low interest loans through a state loan program at 1%, because we know we often hear about student debt, and part of the reason for that student debt is the astronomical interest rates that have been burdened by many of our families within University Place and certainly within Pierce County. And those are just some of the workforce development programs, in addition to expanding apprenticeship programs and career and technical education, and investing in our skills centers. Our students in our K through 12 system certainly have varied interests, and we want to make sure that we have providing different pathways for our students across the board. And those skill centers are one incredible way for students in University Place, at Curtis, who maybe want to go over to the skill center and gain a different kind of interest or skills development so that they can go out and get a job post high school. We're wanting to make sure we provided those opportunities and that expansion of those skill centers to be able to do that. On the housing and homelessness front, you heard some from the good senator of the effort that we're focusing on, but we shifted $500 million into the capital budget to be able to really focus on housing projects both in terms of operating dollars of permanent supportive housing, which we know is so critically important, but in addition to making sure we have grants for local jurisdictions and nonprofits to build up across our state and certainly within Pierce County. You heard the senator talk about the program at Tillicum for self-help development, which is also important. And then also provided incentives for our developers and contractors. We often hear that infrastructure is the most expensive part of housing, as we know, and if you're a nonprofit developer and you're the first one in, you bear the brunt of those costs. And so it makes it really hard to build up affordable housing and middle income housing to be able to do that. So really provided some capital dollars and investments in both incentives and then real dollars to be able to make some of those things happen. I know that Rep. Bernowski is going to talk a little bit about some of our healthcare policies that we invested on. But the final thing I'll say, we really focused on youth homelessness and homelessness overall and expanded so that every community and technical college, including those in Pierce County, will be able to serve our homeless students and foster students. And some may say, well, why do we want to do that? We know that students who are secure in their housing and have the support services that they need are more likely to succeed and be retained and finish off those college degrees and apprenticeship programs and certificates so that they can get out and get a job and take care of themselves and their families. And all of our communities certainly benefit, and our neighborhoods benefit from making sure that they have access both to those services, but then also to ensure that they get out in the community and serve in different ways. So that is a quick, fast run of the many things that we really worked on to bring the costs down, both for our small businesses in the housing and homelessness area, to help our restaurants and our hospitality association and others, and making sure that we get those grants out on workforce development as well, to make sure that we're building up our workforce and building up our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a great list, and lots of activity going on. And with that, I'd like to invite Representative Dan Bernowski to join the conversation as well. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the City Council. I really appreciate the hybrid format of tonight's meeting too. I'm a little under the weather tonight, so I'm glad I was able to be here and be present. So this is working out really great. My colleagues and partners and seatmates here on the 28th have highlighted a lot of great things that we've been working on that I think are going to directly benefit the people of University Place and, quite frankly, people from across the state. I serve on a couple of committees in the House, one of which is the Healthcare and Wellness Committee, and we continue to strive to find ways to provide better access to healthcare and find and address ways to make healthcare more affordable for everybody. So we continue to work on things like surprise billing, so that way if somebody has to go to the hospital through an ambulance through no fault of their own, they are charged a more reasonable fee for services. We're working on ways to address the price of insulin. Yes, we did pass a $35 per dose insulin cap, but also we're looking at it holistically to find a way to, through an advisory board, to find a way that will hopefully address some of the market pressures that are forcing those doses of insulin to raise at exorbitant rates. And I think that's a great way to address both concerns, the immediate concern that there's an issue with affordability now, but a long-term concern to help address that long-term affordability issue. I also serve on the Labor and Workplace Standards Committee. We continue to do good work that provides better and more robust workplace protections for everybody across the state of Washington. And I'm going to continue to do that work, and I'm really proud of that work. We all want everybody at the end of the day to go home happy and healthy, but if something does happen to somebody on the job, they need to be protected. And then finally, I serve on the Transportation Committee. And, like my colleague, Senator Nobles, we did a lot of good work to pass a robust transportation package that I think is going to benefit everybody across the state, and certainly is going to have some benefits for folks that live here in University Place as well. Some of the things that, we are working on with that package is to continue to expand service to things like Pierce Transit. So, for example, we're going to be having a study that's going to hopefully create someday in the near future a bus rapid transit line that goes up the 2 or the 3 route. I think it's 2. Anyway, it goes from Lakewood Town Center all the way up Bridgeport through University Place, hangs a right on 19th, goes downtown Tacoma. 2, there you go. Thanks, Kent. But yeah, it's going to be great. And you know what? Honestly, like that kind of service is going to make somebody like me ride the bus more often. And that's exactly what we want. We want bus service to be convenient for folks so that they want to ride the bus. And that's a great project. We're also making unprecedented investments in maintenance and preservation of existing infrastructure. Something that I think we've heard time and time again, not only from all of you, but from people across the state is, we have made great investments in infrastructure in the past, but we got to maintain it. We got to make sure that bridges stay up. We got to make sure that roads stay open. We got to make sure those potholes are filled. So with that, we are hopefully going to provide more resources to local governments so that way you can also work with us to make those decisions. Now, obviously, we're going to need to continue to make those investments and continue to make more investments, but it is a good start. And also, certain big projects are on the forefront. I mean, it was great to see everyone at the event over at Chambers Creek. That's a really great example of local, state, and federal partnership to address a very big project that's going to have a great impact for our community. There's no question that, that dam needs to be removed. It's going to restore a natural salmon habitat. It's going to really revamp the Chambers Creek area. And, we got a ton of folks that live in Steilacoom and UP and Lakewood and DuPont that, really enjoy driving up and down that road because it's so beautiful. But, there's a public safety element to it too. I mean, currently our ladder truck, the West Pierce ladder truck, cannot safely traverse that bridge because it's so old and it does absolutely need to be replaced. So that's a way that, it's a great partnership to address that big project. And then we're going to have new projects coming forward. I mean, for example, the Day Island Bridge needs to be replaced. It's a bridge that we need to make sure is seismically sound. We need to make sure that if something does happen, it doesn't interfere with the freight and rail traffic that goes underneath the bridge. And obviously, we don't want the folks that live on Day Island to be cut off. So, that's going to be a future project. I know that myself and my other colleagues signed in favor of getting a grant to help do a study on that project. But I'm committed, and I know that we're committed to continuing that work going forward. Finally, just real briefly, I'll add that, I had the honor of being elected by my colleagues and peers to be Deputy Speaker Pro Tem in the House of Representatives. So I get to hold the gavel and preside at the rostrum and facilitate a robust but also a very respectful debate on the floor of the House of Representatives. 95% of the bills that pass out of the legislature are completely bipartisan, and we're really proud of that work. And we're really proud of having good, positive working relationships with every single colleague in the House of Representatives and certainly our colleagues in the Senate as well. But that's something that I'm really proud of, is to help facilitate that very respectful debate that I think is something, is very unique to our state capital, Olympia. And, I'll leave it at that. I think everything was, that I could have thinking of was addressed by my other two colleagues. And thanks again for having us to have an opportunity to present. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for for your comments and your participation and hard work during this last session. I think my colleagues may have a couple of comments or questions, and I just want to give them an opportunity. I may have some closing comments as well. Let's see, I am looking for hands or mic requests. So first one is from Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, and all I have to do is figure out how to turn them on. There we go. I think you're live.
Use this one here. Well, I have to say that, first of all, thank you and thank you. I don't take your work lightly. I wish our citizens out there all knew what you have done for our community. I'm very much impressed by the way that you distribute the wealth among the district. I know there's been issues before about how that wealth was distributed. I believe that you did really an outstanding job in doing that. And I love the way that you, even though I know that Mari lives here, but the other two, Senator Nobles and Dan, you seem to have cared, even though without living here. I know you represent us, but there's representation and there's really caring, and that has shown, and I really do appreciate it. And it shows in our community what has been contributed because of your work. The other thing is the follow-up that is always important, and a lot of these things that have happened for our community, and that has showed. And when I say follow-up from last year to this year, He just didn't drop the ball. Says, well, we did enough for UP, or we did enough for certain areas of UP. Let's just move on to doing something else. And I really do appreciate the follow-up, and I really feel confident that that this will continue, and it's a great relationship to have with you, all three of you. That being said, the only comment I really do have on a lot of these comments that you guys made was Senator Levitt. I just promoted you, Representative Levitt, is when you talked about the grants and monies provided to colleges for technology jobs. And I know that Senator Nobles, you serve on the workforce. So the one thing that I know from my experience and past is that there's been always resources, maybe not as much, and maybe not as deep, and I believe that that's beginning to happen. So it's just not at the administrative level, but I believe that there is a missing component, and that is you might provide all the resources, and the colleges may provide great programs that really teach these kids, these young people, I should say, but they're still young, and they're ready to enter into a professional career, a professional environment of this technology. It's not a kid's game where they just play video games or doing computer. Now they're expected to actually produce and really do something that makes money for the company. And their social skills have not been well developed still at that level to go and attain a job through interviews and how to represent themselves. I believe that there should be resources, money, to provide some kind of concierge service where there is a personal advocate assigned to this young people, and how they are not just saying, well, this is your checklist and how to meet with this employers, human resource people, but actually, or advocates that show up and advocate and say, this is what this young person learned. This is what the certificate means. We are proud that this person is ready. And I think there's got to be some very personal advocation from these institutions to get through that break. And I really believe that's what's missing. So if you can just give us some thought in that area as you grant some monies to these institutions, because really a lot of these folks, young people, they get their certificates and they just disappear, and it's just a waste of money. So you might as well not ever give it money for this to happen. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And Councilmember Fleming, let's see if I can get your mic on. You're next up, followed by Councilmember Wood.
You got it.
Oh, yeah. All right. Good.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To our legislative delegation, thanks for being here tonight with us, and certainly for the update. You know, my comments will be very brief, and I just want to say thank you for the work that you all are doing on behalf of the veterans and our small business and our underserved populations. Those, in my opinion, are really the critical cohorts that whoever we are and whatever elected capacity we have, we owe it to those populations to continue working on their behalf. It's really the individuals who don't have that voice to move those initiatives forward. So the work you've started is awesome, but see it to completion during the next session. You know, and finally, the issue on B&O tax, I'll put a plug in for UP. We don't have it. But for the rest of the state, I know the legislature has worked on that for 20-some years, has made very little headway. I hope that this legislative session and this group of legislators can actually do something about it, because it really is an adverse tax against small business. You know, there's other ways, I suppose, for the state to glean money if they need it for projects, but B&O tax has never been one of those. So I stand behind you all if you're looking to defeat that. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm on. Well, first, I'd like to, again, echo my colleagues' thanks for being here, number one, and for the work you're doing. Very much appreciate your work with veterans, military, small businesses, foster children, medical. There's so much you're doing that I'm actually really happy to hear about. And a couple of things I was actually intrigued to hear about a little bit. I think Representative Levitt brought up the investments in housing and trying to figure out ways that housing can improve there. Because I am, and I'd also, as part of that thing, so I'd like to say thank you for taking a pause in the effort to rezone the state. I'm reasonably certain that will probably get brought back up again next year. But I would really encourage in the time between now and then that you take a look at alternatives that I think will be far more effective. Initial studies are showing that zoning actually has almost zero effect, or rezoning has almost zero effect on the cost of housing. There's other things, however, that may help developers build lower or middle income housing that I think we all agree we need. There's a lot of alternative solutions, and I just encourage taking the time before this comes back up again to come up with a solution that will A, work, and B, will work with the local cities as well. Again, thank you for being here today, and that concludes my comments, Mayor.
Very good, Councilmember Wood. Appreciate that. And Councilmember Keel, your hand's up.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank the three of you for being here again at our annual meeting. I'll put it that way. It's always nice to hear from you directly about the work that you're doing. And I do want to thank you for this past session. As you mentioned, I think it was very fruitful. A lot of great things came out of this session. This time more so than many other years that I can even imagine. Particularly, I'm thinking about the transportation bill and all those things like that, police reform bills. Going forward, this coming session, and I'm going to put on the three hats that I wear, right? As a council member, but also as the chair of Sound Transit and as the president of AWC. There are two big things that I think going forward, and I know you already know this, but I just want to call them out, at least from AWC's perspective and as well as from Sound Transit. And AWC, as you know, is all 281 cities and towns in the state of Washington. I think the very big thing that we are gearing up for in our association for next session is going to be housing, affordable housing. We know that it was hotly discussed, debated, talked about this session. And just to call it out directly, we know that Representative Bateman's got a bill around eliminating local control. I will tell you that AWC is strongly opposed to eliminating local control. Strongly opposed to eliminating local control. And I would say the reason for that is that while we know that there is a problem in the area, many cities are addressing it in a way that fits the need of their city and their citizens. The best example I can give you is University Place. I'm sure staff has given you some information about how we in UP has addressed housing. It's very clear there are a lot of things that the bill wants to mandate that everybody does that UP actually is doing on our own because it fits us. What we're doing may not necessarily fit what another city or the other city. And guess what? What Seattle does doesn't always fit, Tenino or Sultan or even Spokane. And so I really, and I know that you guys represent us, and I know that you're just 3 votes in all of the legislature, but, and 1 in the Senate. I want you to really consider not drinking the Kool-Aid, okay? Because local control, that's why, local people are elected, is to deal with what's local. And Representative Durr's comments notwithstanding, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with her video of, if not, I certainly can share it with you, but making some very derogatory comments about local officials. And it's funny because she's a council member too herself, as well as a legislator out of Kirkland. About how, and I can't even go into all of them, don't want to go into all of them, but very derogatory. And again, I would hope that the three of you would support what local officials are doing and not jump on that bandwagon of, we don't know what we're doing, we need help, you gotta take it away from us because we can't make it happen. Do some research, please, and look at particularly what we're doing in University Place. I think that would answer a lot of any questions that you might have if you're leaning toward wanting to support what Bateman is doing, and that's taking away local control so that the legislature will set up how we do housing. I think that's the wrong move, and I think that, I know that every city well, I'll put it this way, I know that AWC as an organization is opposed to that. All right. The last thing I want to say is, again, thank you about transportation. I think that the bill is a great bill. There's some, at the last end, we did some quirky things around showing up a little gap that we had in there. We're not too happy about that, sweeping our funds again. But I know it was just trying to get it over the across the goal line. My hope is that as we go into this session, that there are some small tweaks around transportation bill as well as around police reform that we're able to work on. And I'd be happy to talk about those as we get closer. But I will stop my comments right now. But knowing that those are things that we need to look at going forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And Councilmember McCluskey, you have some comments? Great.
Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence at our council meeting. And hopefully there's a lot of citizens that are keen on coming into this forum to hear what your comments and all the extensive work that you're doing. Sometimes, we look at our state legislators and we don't realize just the amount of work that it takes to keep, our state running. And so we appreciate you and we're grateful for all your efforts that you're doing. Councilmember Keel took away a lot of my comments. Local control. And population allocations, business allocations, looking at keeping our sometimes the people that are housed are strapped because of the tax increases and inflation, and to look at some of those aspects too, when you're looking at the comprehensive totality of who's housed, who wants to be housed, and looking at the homeless population so that we're not just housing the homeless population, we're also giving them a hand up to extra services so they can have some sense of autonomy as well, and some sense of self-worth, knowing that they can also do it themselves, which I know that they can if they're provided the opportunity. I like the work that has been done in the legislature around policing and especially improvements so that the police can do their job appropriately. And also the retention and recruitment factor in the training of our police officers, how to expedite some of those things so that we can ensure that some of the gaps in the officer roles can be fulfilled and we can gain more police officers on the streets. University Place is one of those cities to look at that. The bus rapid transit, my final comment is that I like the concept. I really don't like the concept of it just being a bulldog barreling through our heart of our city that I know the state as well has provided millions of dollars to help us beautify our heart of our city, which Bridgeport runs right through, unlike any other city. So, be sensitive when it goes through and some of the criteria surrounding it, so we could have local control in the design factor, and so that we could keep the beautification, and also within the beautification is also the interests and incentives for businesses to locate within our town center development. And so we don't want to lose sight of that. So once again, I appreciate you all, and I look forward to someday meeting you in person. It's one of our meets and greets. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember McCluskey, and I guess I will take an opportunity just for some closing comments too. And first off, as we've all said, thank you very much for being here. We always like to hear directly from you as to what's been going on and the outcomes, and it's something I also look forward to as well. Excuse me. I wanted to add that while I've been involved in local government for quite a long time, it is when we have a legislative delegation like yours, which is communicative. You tell us what's going on, you seek our input, you're accessible to us if we have some information or we have a question. You and your staff are right there for us, and we very much appreciate that. And you've been responsive as well, and with the information and with considering our points of view. Now, you may have a variety of reasons why what one of us or all of us may be saying may not be exactly the direction you're going to head, but primarily you certainly listen to us, and to a large degree it seems like the actions you take are very understandable from our perspective as well. So I appreciate your responsiveness, your communication, and your access you've provided, and look forward to that continuing. And thank you for your good work as well. $100,000 in our sewer project is a great step, and you're well acquainted with the needs of this community because of the things I just mentioned about accessibility and communication. And I really do appreciate you understanding UP and what we need, and when the opportunities are there for those to be dealt with, where we feel assured they'll be dealt with. So thank you all for joining us. I don't know if you have any closing comments, but it's been a pleasure seeing you all tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Well, very
Looks
good.
like Representative Levitt
Thank
has a
Representative
comment.
Levitt, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, and it's our highest honor to be joining you. Just want to say a couple more things on schools, because we didn't talk about the K through 12, and I know that we have many families and children in schools and in University Place, and we did quite a bit on that front, and our summer is coming up, so I want to just focus just on a few that we work to stabilize the schools and the school districts to make sure that they are open and are taking care and providing excellent quality services to our students and our families, which was really important. We expanded the meal program. I know that during COVID, all of you probably drove by and saw families lined up at bus stops when students weren't on the buses, and because those bus drivers were providing meals to families. And expanding those meal programs was really important. And then on the school seismic program, we know that we've got some older schools, not so much in UP in the same degree, certainly as other districts in the 28th, but making sure that our schools are safe for students to be in was really important. So expanding those school seismic grant programs to be able to ensure that those school districts who really do have a dearth of dollars and resources, that they can access those funds to keep our families safe. So didn't want to be remiss to say that we expanded those. And then the final thing, and probably most important, I think, to all of us, is on the behavioral health and making sure that schools have access to nurses and expanded access to counselors to make sure that the health, the behavioral health and the physical health of our youth are taken care of, and that was a really important measure that we needed to shore up. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. It's been our pleasure. Well, thank you all, and wish you a good evening. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. You're welcome to stay, but I'm sure you have many competing activities. So thank you for being here. And with that, I'm going to have the pleasure of reading a proclamation. So I'll go step down to do that and present it. Well, perfect. So this evening we have a proclamation that is going to be recognizing Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and I'd like to ask Jazing Singh to step up. Mr. Singh is the president of the Curtis High School Japanese Club, so I've asked if you could receive this, and thank you for joining us tonight. Let me read the proclamation. Whereas American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is a month to celebrate and pay tribute to the contributions of Asian Pacific Americans to American history, society, and culture. And whereas this month of May was selected as its honor, as it honors the immigration of the first Japanese resident of the United States in 1843. Additionally, May also marks the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, constructed by the labor of mostly Chinese immigrants. And whereas the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month originated in Congress in a bill in 1977, on March 28, 1979, President Carter issued Presidential Proclamation 4650, proclaiming the week beginning on May 4th, 1979 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Week. And whereas May 1st, 2009, President Obama issued the Presidential Proclamation 8369, proclaiming May 2009 as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders bring a diversity that represents one of the greatest strengths, and by recognizing their contributions and accomplishments, we celebrate the importance of inclusion to building a brighter future for all citizens. And whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month provides the opportunity to educate the public on the Asian Pacific role in American history and the advancement of civil rights and the equal opportunity for all people of this state. And whereas American, Asian American, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is a time to recognize and celebrate the rich cultural heritage of Asian Pacific Americans and their contributions to our state's economy, social, and democratic institutions. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of University Place do hereby proclaim May 2022 as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month and call this observance to the attention of all our citizens. Proclaimed by the City Council of the City of University Place on May 16th, 2022. Well, would you like to say a few words?
It is an honor to be here today to receive this proclamation on behalf of the Curtis Senior High School Japanese Club. And as a club this year, since January, we have been working very hard to create a video in which we commemorate Asian American and Pacific Islander Month in the form of speaking about Japanese internment and Executive Order 9066, along with the Day of Remembrance and why this topic should still be discussed today. This video will be put up on the YouTube channel Curtis CHN. If you would like to watch it, I implore you to please do so. And thank you very much for having us here today.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. And if you have the opportunity, we might be able to get that on the UPTV station too, as a matter of fact. So congratulations. Thank you for taking your time tonight, and thanks for being here. Yes. Picture with the... We're going to have a group picture. You want the rest of the council to join? Great. We'll check out.
Who will?
Coming down off the mat.
Oh.
Where would you like us? Right there. Love it. impromptu break. Yeah, that's probably a good thing. That's right. That's right. We get to stretch our legs and get fresh for this next segment of the agenda. There, yes. So, and I think my agenda sheet is down there. So, may I borrow yours for just a moment? Yeah, I think I left mine down below. Yep. Actually, I'll go get it because I am going to need that. So, excuses for our pause there, but it's now time on our agenda when we take public comment. We're now in that public comment portion of the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments to the City Council for any items not appearing in the agenda or on the consent agenda. If you intend to provide comments on an item scheduled for the council consideration, that will be addressed later. This is the same process, but we'll hold those comments until later in the agenda. And with public participation, comments are accepted in person, also by email. The email this evening we have, to my knowledge, we have not received any emailed comments. If you still wish to make comment, you may email those to the city clerk. The email address is egenetia@cityofup.com. By telephone, you may call 1-509-342-7253, enter conference number 697-918-414#. Use the raise hand feature by pressing the *5 on your phone to be recognized. Your name or last four digits of your phone number will be called when it's your turn to speak, and at that time press *6 to unmute your phone, and by computer by attending the meeting and raising your hand virtually. We have no public comments provided electronically via email, but we do have a public comment this evening from one person, and with that I would invite Joe Sortini to join us, and you have 3 minutes to make a comment.
My name is Joe Stortini, and I'm really honored to be here, and I'm very, very impressed. Starting with the council, the legislature, having been in the legislature myself from 69 to 77, we didn't have such a thing as Zoom. I had to travel 30 miles, 60 miles both ways in order to meet with our council here. I'm really impressed, and I just got all my comments from our legislators in the 27th district today, and I would rate our legislature probably in the top 10% in America. And the reason I say that is because you don't see them arguing as Democrats and Republicans as so many states are today. When I was there, we had a Republican governor, Dan Evans. We had a Lieutenant Governor, John Sherberg, that was a Democrat. And we all loved each other, and we got along, and we got things done. And I'm hoping that will happen. Anyway, and I'm impressed with these young people. Having been a coach at Curtis High School, we know that Curtis High School is the top 6% in the nation. It's a blue ribbon school, but so is the whole community. When I think of community service, I think of University Place and how much you get together to do things. For example, I can recall 25 years ago having a restaurant here called Mama Stortini's. And we were asked, Bob Lucy came to me and says, we need help at Curtis High School because we have a young girl there that has cancer and it's costing a lot of money. So we put on a fundraiser. And to make a long story short, it was the most heartwarming thing I think I've ever been a part of. Sarah Shuckart had cancer. She's now married. She's teaching school up in Mount Vernon area and has a child. We raised $225,000, all from the community. Every school got involved by bringing their pennies and nickels and dimes to the restaurant. It was just an amazing thing. And I say that because I'm here again to represent the city of Tacoma. I'm chairman of a sister city. The sister city is Porta San Elpidio, where my father was born. It is not one of the sister cities yet. We're going through the process right now. There are 13 sister cities. You have 3 sister cities here. I looked it up today, and I know you're very involved there. Our sister city has a group of 15 people that are really anxious to do something, but the virus has slowed us down. We're going to be number 14. So we're really been hungry to do something in the community. And I mentioned the Sarah Shuckhart thing because my committee wants to do something like that. And we think we can do it with the help of the community council here. When Ken Grassley died, I invited Mrs. Grassley and Melanie Grassley to our meeting. And we talked about a scholarship fund for high school kids and name it the Ken Grassley Scholarship Fund. They were excited about that. And they said, let's do it. So over the last couple of months now, we've worked on a plan to raise dollars. All the proceeds of what we're raising goes to a scholarship fund in the name of Ken Grassley. I've been to Curtis High School 3 times and talked to teachers there that are in charge of scholarship funds. They're 100% for this, and they're putting a scholarship fund together there for our committee. I've been to, I want to say Wilson High School, Salis High School, because that's where Ken went and that's where Kim went. And I was a teacher there at the time. I didn't have them in class, but I know they were good students. They graduated in 1973. And so we sat down and talked about what are we going to do for a fundraiser. Well, we've done it all. Now it's all in place right now, and I'm coming to you saying we need help in selling the tickets. We have the place. Ken Grassley, Mrs. Grassley, Mayor Lee Grassley are all members of a church, the biggest church here in University Place. Our church, they said we can use that church for a fundraiser. We have a fundraiser coming June 30th at 7 p.m. That's a Thursday. And the main thing that we want to really get involved in is what kind of a fundraiser do we want to have? We talked for about 3 or 4 weeks, and we decided that we'd turn the clock back a ways to when Ken was at Wilson High School and even in junior high school at Mason. And the biggest entertainer at that time, and Ken Grassley was a fan of this man, was Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley has been here before. In the last month, I've been talking with according to some people, in fact, Elvis Presley's fan club rated this man, he's from Tacoma, as #1 Elvis Presley impersonator in the world. There are 450,000 Elvis Presley impersonators in the world. He's rated in the top 10 by Elvis Presley fans. He's the top, and the nice thing is, he lives right here in Tacoma, about 15 minutes from here in Milton, in the Edgewood area. And in conferring with him, he's excited about coming here. He knows that University Place is a great place. He's been here before. He's been here at the performance at the Kern Farm. And there was a huge crowd. I was there that day. It was a huge crowd. And he's going to be here then June 30th. As of yesterday or Saturday, I have 500 tickets. The Grassleys at their church are taking an amount of tickets. We've talked to people from the Emerald Queen, and they're going to take a bunch of tickets, and they're going to be passing them out. And I guess I'm turning to the council here. University Place has been such a great place, as I said, the most heartwarming place for me, that we're turning to you for some help to be part of that scholarship fund. The scholarship is going to be made out in Ken Grassley's name. It'll be given to a high school kid that's going to college that represents Ken Grassley. And Ken Grassie's probably main thing is community service, a way of life. That's been his whole life, community service. And I'm just here to say, please help us in some way, whatever way you want to help us, by taking tickets, by getting other people involved, by giving me names of people that may want to buy tickets as part of the scholarship. As I said, the entire proceeds goes to the Ken Grassley Fund, and the scholarship is determined by the teachers at Wilson High School, and I keep forgetting that Wilson High School is a different name, and of course Curtis High School. They're excited about this. I'm excited about it. Our committee's excited about it, and this is our way. I'm kind of selfish because it's our way of letting the city and our head lady, I'm trying to think of Woodworth, Victoria Woodward, our mayor, that we're really eager to do something. And we want to kind of show off and have a big fundraiser. And we know that community from University Place is in the spirits to do this.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Stordini. I appreciate the opportunity and hearing about this wonderful opportunity that it is, and something to commemorate one of our fellow council members and his role in the community, and continue to serve in helping with the education of young people as well. In case we don't routinely respond back, I guess I am in this particular circumstance. Nonetheless, I'll have some discussion with my council members, and we'll see what may be appropriate from our perspective. But thank you very much for telling us about this this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We do have one other public comment, and this one is from online. I can't quite see the full phone number, but I see a raised hand. And
Mayor, the phone number is, the last four digits is ending in 7364.
7364. And then, it is your opportunity to comment, and if you'd like to take yourself off of mute and tell us your name, please.
My name is Dennis Flan, 2623 Lemons Beach Road, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm wanting to make a comment and a request about the property tax abatements and the cost impact on the UP taxpayers, and some kind of transparency on the actual dollars lost to this program that could have helped pay for more law enforcement officers in UP. Personally, I did not receive a questionnaire about the police in UP and how to fund it, but overall, taxes in UP are way up. We have the franchise fees, the utility taxes, and property taxes, as usual, going up astronomically. So I wonder if there's some way that we could put a number on the huge increase in apartments that are coming in and the abatements that are being allowed for them. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. We'll see if we can develop some information through our staff. And do we have any other public comments? I don't see any, and we will move on to our next piece of tonight's agenda. In that case, we're moving to City Council Rules of Procedure, and I think that City Attorney Matt Kaiser will be presenting that. Is that right, Mr. Sugg?
Yes, Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Matt Kaiser, City Attorney. Before I speak to rules of procedure, I do note that we do have a consent agenda.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you for thank you. Appreciate you bringing that up. And sorry about that. Let's move back to the consent agenda and get that out of our way. Is there, I'm going to take care of appropriately, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, second.
Thank you for the second. And are there any objections to the approval of the consent agenda this evening? Any objections? I don't see any. The consent agenda is approved. Mr. Kaiser, thank you for helping us on that point of order. So would you like, feel free to continue.
I'll go ahead and continue. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Matt Kaiser, City Attorney. As council is certainly aware, once every 2 years or so by council rules, you take the opportunity to review the council rules. These are on tonight for action. Previously, council had the opportunity to engage in extensive discussion of its prior council rules, beginning at its first retreat of the year as well as an earlier study session. In the course of that, council identified several rules which it flagged for particular amendment. I'm going to jump around and save the big one to the end. Those rules that council had identified for potential amendment dealt with first, amending the term of the finance committee chair, or who would be the finance committee chair, that individual being from a separately elected individual of the council to the mayor pro tem, beginning January 1st of 2024. Second, refining comments made by council during the council comment section in order to provide greater transparency and communication amongst members of the council. 3, changing the method by which to excuse council member absences. Our current practice is at the beginning of the meeting, if a member is absent, may I have a motion to excuse council member so-and-so? Changing that to allow an additional process where a member, if they know to be absent, can notify the mayor. And if the mayor is not available, notifying the clerk or the city manager in advance. And then if that process is followed, that during roll call, that the clerk would announce that that individual is excused with council still having a check. The final piece that does deserve some comment deals with virtual participation. And this is something that council's had the opportunity to discuss in multiple ways before, but for the first time really with actual rule changes before it. Historically, council had not taken advantage of remote participation except in limited circumstances. Over time, that rule has changed. Initially, the rule had changed to allow for presence in order to secure a quorum. With the pandemic, as Representative Levitt spoke to earlier this evening, with emergencies, we amended the rule at the very outset of COVID, the COVID emergency. To do that, there's a slight change in language to align with new HB 1329. And then to how does council want to go moving forward in the course of this? And that represents really the third choice, or the third option for virtual participation. The rule has drafted, which you see in your packet tonight, contemplates ongoing remote participation by council members when the rest of the meeting is being in a hybrid format. That follows the text of the recent statutory language. Absent that language, and absent an emergency or necessary of a quorum, that would require all council members to be present for a council meeting. So those are the rule changes tonight. I'm happy to answer any further follow-up questions. I recognize that we are somewhat on some burn time here, but without turning the matters back to council.
Thank you. Wanted to just see if we have any public comment at this point, and then we would move to council consideration or discussion and consideration. So do we have any members of the public that would like to make comment? Any members of the public? And I'm not seeing any hands. All right, then we will move on to council consideration. And is there a motion for consideration?
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to for the city council rules procedure as presented.
Very good, thank you. And is there a second?
Councilmember Luisi seconds.
We have a motion and a second, and do we have any discussions? And Councilmember McCluskey is first on here. If I can actually turn her mic on. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. My only comment is on page 2 for the remote participation. I support strongly encouraging all council members to come to a council meeting in person. It shows that our city is there in a public display ready to go versus, having a meeting and there's no one on the dais as the meeting is going forward. I as I'm reading remote participation, it looks like it's alluding only to emergency declarations. And I would like to add that if a council member, like one of our legislatures, were tonight ill, but could be present remotely, that be allowed, and that person would also be allowed to vote. And so I don't know how that aligns with the Open Public Meetings Act, or maybe Matt Kaiser could elaborate on that. But I would think, or a council member is traveling, that they could still participate remotely, even though it is not a declared state of emergency.
You could do it in the circumstance in which you're referring to, Councilmember McCluskey. What I would suggest is if you continue on to the next page, the 3 triggers relate to 1, the local state of emergency, or local or state of emergency, 2, lacking the quorum, or 3, C, in circumstances not satisfying those 2 parts, so long as the public's available. That's the hybrid rule. So that would get you to such as what Representative Bernosky shared earlier this evening, that he was under the weather, or if we had a council member traveling, or the like, as long as we had a hybrid format.
Okay. Do we need to define that further so that it's more explicit for travel, illness, sometimes a family emergency?
Here's what I might suggest to you, because I'm going to throw the question back at you, and I don't mean to be plucky about it.
That's okay. Cluck away.
No, because if you're talking about illness, at what point, if you say, hey, I'm going to be out of town, how much of a lead time, what triggers would be necessary to say, hey, I'm sick, ill, traveling, how much lead time is necessary to secure that equipment? Who makes the decision that a council member would have the opportunity to participate remotely if one of those triggers would ultimately be there? So those are the sort of considerations I would urge you to consider. From an OPMA perspective, there's nothing wrong with what you're suggesting.
Okay. Well, from my understanding, if we have the hybrid technology, which we do, we could do that. For example, if I happen to get sick tonight, I could still pop on virtually and still be able to participate in the meeting.
Correct.
And not, spread my, lovely germs amongst my colleagues, or I could be not fit for travel, but I could be fit for service virtually. So why wouldn't that technology be available at any time, even an hour before our meeting?
I guess what I'm saying is who referees is really the issue, and how prescriptive with the rule are you trying to be? So if you're, let's roll with your example for a second. If you're at home remotely, saying, well, how do you want to go about saying I'm participating remotely because I'm sick or traveling or the like? That's the issue it has amongst yourselves to try and navigate. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear.
Okay, well, if you're traveling, you kind of know beforehand. If
you're you know, because you can tell in the background.
So there is the mayor and the city clerk option for things that happen really quickly. So I don't know what type of high-level sort of refereeing that really needs to get done. I don't think it's that complicated. And we are elected by our citizens and to make sure that we are present and available to the best of our ability. And we do have it in the language that, and unless there's I will say, an emergent situation, we are to be here in person. I don't want to have that as a scapegoat or an excuse. I'm feeling tired, so I'm not going to go to the meeting. That's probably not. That won't really fly. But otherwise, I think for cases of unforeseen circumstances that would impede a council member to be present, they could do it virtually and also be able to vote.
Give me a minute. Let me see what I can draft.
Okay. While you consider that, we have some other folks to make comment. Are you done, Councilmember McCluskey?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in line with Councilmember McCluskey on this train about a little bit more clear. I think there are ways to, just like on the excuse absences, we hope, and it's not explicit, but we do hope that people don't wait to the 10 seconds when everybody's busy to say, I'm not going to be there, please excuse me. I mean, I think there's a kind of a mutual respect among members and our administrative staff that may have to receive a call and say, please excuse me, that should be, unless it is an accident of some sort, the person just fell and broke their leg and they're going to the hospital and they call and says, okay, I can't make it, please excuse me. But there's a reason for that. Other than that, people have they have time to call ahead of time. Even that morning is enough. We're not talking about 2 weeks or a week. And the same thing with this here. Unless, if it's really an emergency, they're not going to make the meeting no matter what. So they should have already had figured out that they can't make it here for sure, because that morning they woke up with not feeling really well, and they call. They all of a sudden they got called and said, I need you in Boise for a business meeting, and okay, so you call right away. But usually that doesn't happen 5 minutes before the meeting. I mean, that would be extremely rare, and so I think that similar to the excuses that the council member needs to call in to the mayor or the city clerk or city manager, advising them that they would need to do the hybrid because they're going to be traveling, or because they're sick, or because their child just fell and the other partner is not available to be home and they need to be home. All kinds of things, but they can give and provide and make the call like we do in the other process. So I think that we could make it. We can kind of adjust. We can be a little bit clearer about how to be allowed and be, for better words, excused to be hybrid and be able to vote. If you don't call and to the last minute, it better be an emergency. And if it is, I believe that most cases you shouldn't even be in the meeting if you had just an emergency 5 minutes before. That being said, about the hybrid availability, I read that and it sounded like, well, if it's available, what are we talking about? That really was confusing, because we spent how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, or 60,000 or 80,000 to have this whole hybrid system hooked up, and all of a sudden we may not have it available. It should always be available. You don't ever know when the city needs to do this for the community. And I thought we had it by default for our community members that can't make it here to be able to join us. So I'm really confused on that end. Why it can't just be there? And so if a member does get excused to be hybrid, because what I mentioned was somewhat of an excuse process, they should be able to join us hybrid by default, not with other means. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wood, and then Councilmember Fleming after that.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple things I'd like to mention. First, I'm basically in favor of the text as written, largely because there are a number of reasons why a council member may not be able to be present in person, and getting into the detail of what those are may involve getting into specific, say, family medical issues or something like that frankly aren't anybody's business but our own. Having said that, obviously we all want to have the intent to be here. And I am in favor, as Councilmember Figueroa brought up, we have this lovely hybrid system. I think it should be on all the time, even if all 7 of us are here, because I think it's a great way for the public to participate in our meetings. It's because a lot of folks are vulnerable or have mobility issues, and it's very good to have a means for them to participate in our meetings. And so I don't see a technical problem with having the hybrid option available for council members as well. Thank you, Mayor. That's my comment.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, then Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At least I've been trying to track this. Sometimes it gets a little confusing of what we're really asking for. But, you know, Matt, from what I understand and what you were sharing, the purpose of the language reflects, I guess, a certain amount of trust among the members of council. Take the names off. It doesn't matter who's here at the rostrum. But, you know, laws are not made for the here and now, but made for the present and the future. So when I'm looking at, you know, attendance, I think there's got to be a certain element of trust among the members of council that whoever is requesting the excuse is that they've exercised good judgment, that they're not using it because they feel lazy or they're too tired or too this or too that. So I do like the idea of a hybrid. I do know that when we talk about travel, there's going to be times when people are either remote, i.e. up in the mountains or someplace where you're not getting good coverage that's been planned or whatever, or they're overseas traveling. I would hate for the council to say, doesn't matter, you still got to remote in for something like that. I think if I were prioritizing this, I would say the preference of council should be we should always attend when it's possible to attend in person, to the hybrid when it's not possible, and 3, to request the excuse when you're simply not possible to be there hybrid or in person. But there's a courtesy that has to be extended not only to the mayor but to the other members of council to at least notify ahead of time or as far ahead as possible when they can't attend, so that accommodations can be made to adjust for that. To Council Member Wood's point, there's times someone's going to have an acute illness either with themselves or with a family member. It's going to be the last minute. They can't plan or anticipate those type of actions. And so there's got to be a little grace in there somehow to accommodate for that. So those are my 10 cents for what they're worth. Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. And Councilmember Keel, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Matt, my first question is, so what rules are we working under right now? And I'm asking that. I know it's the previous rules for us that we have because we haven't changed anything. Right. But I'm also thinking that we still are until June 1st under the governor's rule that we've got to be hybrid. I mean, that we got
right. Effective 12:01 a.m. on June 1st, the governor's OPMA proclamation goes away.
Okay.
So with what's in your packet today, that subpart C that you're talking about, if that were implemented, that's effectively preserving the status quo that you're operating under today. You know, and our look. What's that?
Which is remote, right? Which is remote. Okay.
Which is you're remote as long as the public's also remote. There is that subpart A related to emergencies. We do have the local state of emergency. Don't lose sight of that. But at some point, that's going to go away too. But focus on C, because C is effectively, here's your status quo, that we've been going to. And that kind of goes a little bit with what Councilmember Fleming was speaking to a minute ago, which was, at what point do you want to put it in the rules or versus are you accountable to each other as co-equals, one among 7? I do have language that gets to, I think, what Councilmember McCluskey was looking at earlier, and that's something I can share that. But for your question, Councilmember Kill, I hope that it kind of gets to what your question is.
Yes. So I just wanted to establish that we're still underneath the governor's mandate to be remote today, and in June it's going to change, and then hopefully we'll have our rules updated so that we can coincide with what the new is. Okay, great. So after that, I do agree with what many of my colleagues have said about how we go about excusing ourselves and stuff like that. I agree with having the hybrid and board members, council members having the flexibility to use it responsibly so that we can manage ourselves and our families and all the stuff that we got to do to attend the meeting. So I'm in line with all that, and I'll stop, and I'm interested in hearing what your language is for
Yeah.
that you're suggesting.
Yeah, with council's indulgence, I can do a screen share. I got screen share privileges a minute ago. I should be sharing now.
Yes.
All right. I added the highlighted language to subpart C that I think gets to the stated concerns that Councilmember McCluskey enunciated. And I don't know if that's showing well, and oh, I assume it is.
Yeah, I can see it perfectly.
Does council understand what that language is now?
Should be excused absence, should be reasons for hybrid participation.
So, why don't we go around the horn here, or at least have council members ask to discuss this so we can all participate then. Any council member comments on this proposed, this possible amendment? Matt, could you read the amendment for us all?
Yeah, let me read the amendment. It would add text to, let me make sure I have this right here, just for the purposes of the meetings. Section 2, subpart F, what is that, C? It would add the clause, quote, and the council member has a circumstance, begin parentheses, i.e. out-of-town travel, illness, or other emergency, end paren, which would ordinarily justify an excused absence, period, end amendment.
So could you read all of C, or maybe you just...
All of C, if adopted, has amended, would read, in circumstances not satisfying subparts A or B, so long as there is an option for the public to listen to the meeting, and the council member has a circumstance, i.e. out-of-town travel, illness, or other emergency, which would ordinarily justify an excused absence.
Okay, thank you. Does that help? Do we have any questions about the language being proposed? Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, just a moment while I get your mic on. Oh, I guess I got Councilmember Belisi on. Anyhow, I'll try for...
This other one on.
Yeah. Councilmember Belisi, did you want to... Okay.
Thank you.
There, you're on now.
Thank you, Mayor. The one that, I guess it's the excused absence at the end of that kind of bothers me, because it should say to be excused for participate, to be given the opportunity to participate by hybrid, because this is what this is about. It's not an excused absence. And maybe it's just I'm reading between the lines too much, but it's not an absence of anything. That language, that's just, that word has bothered me, and I think it should be something that comes back to saying provides an excuse, if you want to use the word excuse, for participation in a hybrid format versus present. Something like that, to me, would be a little bit clearer. So that's my only point.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then Councilmember, I have Councilmember Fleming here. Councilmember Belisi, if I can figure out how to get your mic on, I'm going to do that. There we go. Yeah, all right.
I like your additions, Mr. Kaiser, to item C. Basically, what you've stated there is that if your excused absence, if the reason for your excused absence that we would ordinarily give you a pass on for not attending, those similar circumstances would qualify you for participation in a remote meeting. Because you've got the opening paragraph that states that you're encouraged to attend meetings in person. then what qualifies as remote participation is a local emergency. If there's not a quorum because of whatever situation, we can have remote participation. Or under item C, if you have what would qualify as an excused absence, you could also request participation in a remote meeting. So I think it covers what Councilmember McCluskey was asking about earlier, and I like the added language.
Okay. Councilmember Fleming.
I guess I'm already on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the comments that have been previously made, and I don't mean to wordsmith, Matt, because I do appreciate what you've tried to do there. But I'm just wondering if there was just some language into this said and or the remote participation or excused between the two. I think that would answer, I think, everyone's comments that I've heard so far up here.
I missed part of your comment, Councilmember Fleming. You were talking and or between two words. Yeah. I just didn't catch the two words.
Remote participation and or excused. Because I mean, I really hear both sides of this conversation in terms of what about the excused? What about the remote participation? And I think there's an opportunity there for both. It may not always be one or the other. So if you had it and or, then
are you talking right here?
I have no idea where right here is, but I'm in the council chamber, so yeah, right here in the council chamber.
Okay, yeah.
So I'll leave to your judgment where to insert the word so it makes sense.
All right.
So I'm going to call in a moment Councilmember Wood, but before I do that, I want to point out we don't actually have an amendment proposed yet, so this is just in the discussion phase, and it would be great to move to that amendment soon. But first, before I'm going to go to Councilmember Wood and then Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So just briefly, I think the idea that Councilmember Fleming brought up is that there should be an assumed trust or grace, I think is appropriate for the council members. And honestly, I think any amendment added to this subpart C is unnecessarily restrictive. I think everybody agrees on the intent that we should be here if at all possible, but adding this amendment seems to me kind of gratuitous, and I'm not in favor of it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. The other part, and I just wanted to be clarified that there is the option for the council member who is in a remote participation to be able to vote.
That's yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And so
yeah, if you were to go up just a little bit, there's I don't know how much I'm sharing here. Yeah. The sentence right before says, unless one of the following circumstances are present, participation will not constitute attendance. The absent council member will be deemed absent, and the council member will not be able to vote remotely. And then you got to trigger one of those three triggers. And so what we're talking about is one of those three triggers.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. So is this the right time to propose the amendment?
I believe that it is. So.
Okay, I'd like to propose the amendment to the current updates in our council rules as denoted by our attorney, Matt Kaiser, as written in his highlighted text. And I can't see it to read it, so, but well, we pretty much know what it says.
We've had it read several times, but just to be clear, do you want us, would you like Mr. Kaiser to read it one more time?
Please, since we've been tweaking it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll do the red line. Current version of the would-be amendments is C. In circumstances not satisfying subparts A or B, so long as there is an option for the public to listen to the meeting, the amendment would add the following clause. And the circumstance, begin parentheses, i.e. out-of-town travel, illness, or other emergency, end paren, which would ordinarily justify an excused absence, end amendment.
Okay, thank you. Having clarified the amendment, that is what you intended?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is there a second for the amendment?
That's Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so the amendment can be considered. Is there any discussion on the amendment? I don't see any discussion. Maybe excuse me, Councilmember Belisi, is your hand, are you in? Okay. I don't see any discussion, then we'll go to a vote on the amendment.
Right,
Sorry,
vote
Mayor.
on the amendment. Councilmember Keel?
I did have a discussion. I couldn't
I'm
get to my
sorry.
button fast enough. Sorry, it's on me.
Let's go to the discussion and then we'll move from there.
Right. So I just want to be clear what we're voting for. Is this whole thing before us? Because I thought we just were talking, and it sounds like we're voting on an amendment that there's no legislation before us to amend. Right?
There is legislation. You have two motions before you. The main motion that was moved about 10, 15 minutes ago was a motion to amend the council rules. Councilmember McCluskey, seconded by Belisi, made a motion for the instant amendment.
Okay, good. It went right out of my head. Okay, thank you.
All right. Then we'll continue with, thank you for the clarification, and now we'll continue with the vote.
All right, Councilmember Keel?
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Wood?
Councilmember Wood, nay.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Councilmember Belisi?
Councilmember Belisi, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa?
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, aye.
Mayor Worthington?
Mayor Worthington, aye.
Mayor, vote result 6-1. Motion passes.
Very good, thank you. And we can move on to the main motion, which is the primary council rule change that was before us. Is there any further discussion on that before we go to a vote? Any discussion on the main motion for the council rule change that was as distributed with the new amendment? Okay. Please, we'll go to vote on that.
Motion is amended. Councilmember Keel?
Councilmember Keel, aye.
Councilmember Wood?
Let's see if I can keep.
I'm sorry. Are we voting on the entire council rules now? Yes, okay. Councilmember Wood, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Councilmember McCluskey, aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Councilmember Fleming, aye.
Councilmember Belisi?
Councilmember Belisi, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa?
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, aye.
Mayor Worthington?
Mayor Worthington, aye.
Both results 7-0. Motion passes.
Very good, thank you. Motion passes. And with that, we get to move on to our next bit of business, which is a report from City Manager Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm pleased to report that last Monday, in fact, we received notification from the Government Finance Officers Association that we have been issued an award of certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting for fiscal year 2020. This is the highest form of recognition in government accounting and financial reporting. Congratulations to Finance Director Leslie Blaisdell and her team for the excellent work. And again, this is the 24th consecutive year that they've been awarded this highest award of achievement in financial reporting.
Very good.
The second item, I'm sure you all know, is Duck Days Parade is going to be happening next month on Saturday, June 4th. It'll start at 10 a.m. at 29th and Bridgeport. It'll proceed south along Bridgeport to the west and ends at the West Pierce Fire Station. Businesses, scout groups, community groups, and organizations are invited to march in the parade at no cost. They can make application by Friday, May 20th at 4 p.m. We're accepting applications for those that want to march in the parade. And with that, I'll just close my comments, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. Appreciate the comments, and let's hear it for Duck Days. So, good to be back to it. With that, I need to go to my batting order as to seat number 1. Is that Councilmember Keel? Thank you. And Councilmember Keel, do you have any comments?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let everyone know that, as you may recall, the Sound Transit is in the process of hiring a new CEO. We have been in executive session most of the day today. We're looking to winnow that down to 2 candidates that we, at that point in time, will daylight to the public, and then those candidates will have an opportunity to meet with interested parties. Our city council could be one of those to answer questions, and those parties will have a chance to I would say, examine the candidates and then provide feedback before the full board makes a final decision on the new CEO. So that's going on. The other thing that I would mention today is in our comments with our legislators earlier, I mentioned AWC's position around local control, and I've expressed that to some of you already. And AWC really supports local control, and any bill that comes out around housing that takes that away. AWC was opposed to that this year and will be opposed to that in coming years, and not opposed to just we don't want to do it. We're opposed, but in a positive way, that we want to work with the legislature to figure out a way that we can come to a good solution to where the proposers of the bill get what they need and cities still gets what they need. And I think that there's a spot in there that there's a win-win, and our hope is that the legislature would be open to that discussion. But I tell you, in the past, they didn't seem to be. It was either their way or no way, which is unfortunate. But we'll continue to try to work with them to say that there's some middle ground in there that really will answer the bill for what we all want and need for housing. So that discussion is going to continue. We are writing a letter, though, that's coming out on AWC letterhead, as well as the Association of Counties are writing a letter to the legislature and to Representative Durer in particular around some disparaging comments that were made on her part about local electeds. And normally, those are things we try to take, just in conversations. But because of the egregious comments and the format which it was done, we just feel that it's both the county association and the city association feel that it's necessary that we are more public about our response to what we've seen. And so you'll see that. And I just want to let you all know where all that's coming from. And that's concludes my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. And by the way, between the Association of Washington Cities and the Association of Washington Counties, it's every local general purpose jurisdiction in the state. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
yep.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good move. Thank you. Councilmember Wood, do you have some comments? And let me get your mic on. There we are.
I just have one very brief comment. Just want to let my colleagues know that this week I was elected as the interim president of the board of directors of the Friends of the Lewis Army Museum. So I've got one more additional duty here, and but it's a good cause.
Congratulations. All right.
All right.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That brings us to Councilmember Figueroa, or excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sorry. It doesn't bring us to you. You get to wait because you are the Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, that was the old list that is still in my mind. Let me get my new list up. Certainly that brings us to Councilmember McCluskey. All right. And if you want to, push your speaker button, I'll recognize it and we'll be off and running. There we go.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I'm excited that Duck Days is being back. So my big hairy question is, do we do the candy or do we not? What is it? Do I buy $150 worth of candy, or do I save it and save the kids' teeth? No. Okay. So I have just a report out from SHAPE, but we're going to get a quite extensive report in the next few minutes from the new director, Jason Guthier, which is really important. I'm going to take copious notes from all my colleagues because I get to vote on this in July. And so he's making his rounds, and looks like we're probably one of the first ones on his bucket list. But also to note that the city of DuPont is now part of SHAPE. So SHAPE is shaping up to collectively, pretty much, I think, all of Pierce County cities and towns. You know, Jason can correct me if I'm wrong. So with that, I'm going to close my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. And then Councilmember Fleming, if you want to push your speaker button, I'll try and recognize it, and we'll be, there we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief tonight. I have nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Very good. And Councilmember Belisi.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey, for mentioning the candy. It is a issue. It was such an issue that we were asked not to throw it because of how it was maybe potentially kids at risk being popped in the eye with candy and our liabilities. I think that it sounds trivial to be talking about candy, but it is a big deal at our Ducks Parade. The community somewhat expects for us to throw things out. And so it is a city function. It is, we are there in a official capacity. And I believe that we should have the city provide certain things that we can give out, like the squeeze I Love UP, which is very soft, can be thrown, and it would never hurt anybody. And things like that can be soft, represent UP. Candy doesn't have anything that says UP on it. It is, I always worry. I mean, I'm just throwing it. I always worry that if I throw it too hard, I'm going to hit this, kid or whatever. And I just don't like the idea of throwing it. But I also don't like the idea of not throwing anything, because then I look like I'm not sure what the word I would use, but it is bothersome, and it is a city function, and we are there in a city as an official capacity. I believe the city should provide some things that we safely can throw out of our cars to the community that actually says maybe UP on it. I think that would be an appropriate expenditure and the right thing to do. So we have been very fortunate not to have hit anybody in a way that a claim is made, but it's time to make that correction. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My opportunity to make some comments as well. It's been kind of a busy period of time, which is great, and people are getting out and back to one another. And so I wanted to, one particular thing I wanted to comment about was, wanted to thank Congresswoman Strickland for providing a personal invitation to me to attend the event here in University Place, recognizing the future project with Chambers Creek. It was a pleasure to attend that and to see the Speaker of the House participate in that event, along with a number of other regional or area mayors, I should say, and other elected officials. So it was quite a gathering, as a matter of fact. But I was very personally pleased to have the invitation. Also, the Mayor Pro Tem and I, along with our spouses, attended the 16th Cab Brigade Ball. And it's been a couple of years, but Council Member, then Mayor Belisi, had attended, and now I know about the grog.
Did you not bring booze?
I I did not bring my contribution to the grog, and if I'm fortunate enough to have an invitation again, even after that faux pas, I would say, but I got a chance to try the grog, and I thought it was amazing. It was just the right amount of hydraulic fluid and jet fuel that just kind of wash it down. I know Mayor Pro Tem had a chance to have. Yeah, yes, yes. Yeah, it was great. And it was a great night and fun to watch all these young men and women that are out there defending us and have a very fun night. But it was a special treat to be part of that and appreciate that invitation as well. Let's see, I was going to talk about Duck Days, but I don't need to. I wanted to thank and congratulate Leslie and her team, and about it. I do feel like we probably need to talk about Duck Days about candy, though. So, Duck Days, as we know, is June 4th. That's a little bit more than 2 weeks away. Not a lot of time for us to get much of anything in quantities of. How many people do you think we have typically show up? Who knows what will happen this year, but I think it's 1,000 or 2. And yeah, I'm having a hard time thinking about not throwing something as well or providing something in some way. And I don't think we're going to get 1,000 or 2,000 red exercise balls in the next 20 days.
Maybe.
Maybe. It's a little less than 20, actually.
Steve is a super city manager.
He is. He has done some magic things.
He's told us several times, just ask me, council, and I'll provide.
Yeah.
Several times.
So I guess I would like to get some sense of where council is on this, but I'm a little perplexed about how we get there. And all. Personally, I have several pounds of candy coming to distribute, but that's just me. So yeah. Anyhow. All right. Yeah. So. I think if we were to end that tradition, we need to do it in a way that we're all kind of participating in that and agreeing that that's what we want to do, and we have enough time to do whatever is next. And I don't think that a 2-week notice is going to quite get us allowed.
And I didn't mean for this time because it was so soon, but I'm talking about for the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's good that we talk about this. We really haven't had the opportunity. It's one of the challenges we have in a public setting. And this is a fine thing to talk about publicly, but I wanted a chance to touch on that. Okay, so with that, those that want to distribute candy certainly may, and we'll do that in as gentle a way as possible, I'm quite certain. And we'll get back to the rest of our agenda, where we're now moving into study session, and the Housing Affordability Partners Work Plan, with Jason's help. Let's see, Jason, thank you for hanging in there. I know we're running long in our agenda, but we really have been looking forward to meeting you and getting a chance to hear about the work plan. Please.
Thank you, Mayor Worthington, and I'll ask staff to pull up the presentation. And since we are running a little behind, I will probably try to be a little quick on a couple of sections here tonight, out of respect for your time and the public's time. So. And I'd also like to thank Councilmember McCluskey for extending tonight's invitation. And I'll quickly mention, because Councilmember McCluskey's prompting, that with DuPont's adoption of the intergovernmental agreement, we now have 15 members in SHAPE, 13 cities and towns, the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and Pierce County. For the record, I'm Jason Gauthier, the South Sound Housing Affordability Partners Manager. I'll also take a quick note and point of personal privilege that although I lived in University Place for 6 years, this is my first time attending a University Place City Council meeting. My intention tonight is to review and receive feedback from the Council on SHAPE's draft, work plans, strategic priorities, and strategies, as the SHAPE Executive Board works to implement a 2022 work plan, which is the collaborations first. For a bit of background, SHAPE's intergovernmental agreement gives the Executive Board the responsibility and authority to create and implement an annual work plan to guide the work of SHAPE staff and provide benefit to member governments. I'll ask staff to change to the next slide. Tonight's presentation will cover the following. Number one, our work plan development. Two, our work plan principles, strategic priorities of the work plan, strategies to achieve these strategic priorities, and an implementation timeline for this work plan. Next slide. The development of the work plan began formally in December of 2021 with the work coordinated by the Cedar River Group, a consultancy that has worked for SHAPE for a little over 2 years. The draft work plan was developed with input, review, and feedback at multiple points from a combination of the executive board, a subgroup of the executive board, and a member government staff work group. The executive work board subgroup members were Puyallup Deputy Mayor Ned Whitting, Edgewood City Council Member Christy Keith, Pierce County Council Member Ryan Mello, Lakewood City Council Member Linda Farmer, and because Councilmember Farmer had to take some time off in between, she was supplanted by the alternate member for Lakewood Mayor Jason Whalen. Next slide. The board subgroup developed 7 principles to guide the work plan development. Those 7 principles are actions that benefit the diverse needs of member governments, the creation of opportunities for early collaborative success, leveraging the momentum from other efforts or new resources, reflecting SHAPE's most important reasons for existence, creating tangible results for member governments, acknowledging and amplifying the value of existing resources and entities, and framing priorities to get critical work started. Next slide. From there, 5 strategic priorities were developed. First, develop and support policies and programs that prioritize and incentivize residential production. Next slide. Second, refine the understanding of affordable housing solutions and promising practices. Next slide. Third, assisting member governments in achieving affordable and attainable production and preservation goals. Next slide. Fourth, ensure our community's affordable, attainable, and accessible housing needs are represented. Next slide. And finally, complete the organizational aspects of the SHAPE intergovernmental entity. Next slide. Inside each of these strategic priorities, the board subgroup identified strategies to achieve these strategic priorities and further identified some as must-do items. The must-do items are those in blue. When discussing the work plan with executive board subgroup members, there was a recognition that several strategies will become ongoing elements of SHAPE's work plan, meaning that we'll expect to see some version of these strategies on subsequent annual work plans. These receive the ongoing designation. You'll also note that strategic priority 5 is shaded differently. This is specific to the development of the infrastructure to support SHAPE and its work and its strategic priorities. Out of respect for our time today, I'll focus on 4 strategies. Next slide. Strategy 1A. Identify 1 to 3 policy and program areas that have significant impact and or potential for impact, and develop a toolkit for tracking and dissemination. Inside this priority, we're asking our member governments, what are the best programs and policies that are in use by member governments that have led to significant impact on the creation and preservation of affordable, attainable, and accessible housing? And what are the programs and policies that member governments would like to be able to access, but which would require legislative action? This one I feel might be a favorite of Councilmember Keel with his notes about work in Olympia tonight. SHAPE will ask these questions and creates, in the words of Deputy Mayor Whitting, a toolbox to provide those answers to SHAPE member governments for their evaluation and consideration. Strategy 1B, explore potential collaborative project funding to increase affordable housing developments. This will be an ongoing priority of SHAPE, as SHAPE can and play a central role as a connector and evaluator for potential collaboration between member governments on affordable housing projects. Strategy 2A, identify, package, and share essential data on the existing and projected housing need and housing production. As a data-driven collaboration, we will work with our member governments to help identify their housing needs. Identifying these housing needs by household income category to understand at what price points our housing inventory is lacking, and identifying the housing production outputs inside each member government's boundaries to better understand what's getting built, where it's being built, and why it's being built in those locations. Next slide. And strategy 3B, design mechanisms to identify member government's technical and or program assistance needs, and prioritize the fulfillment of those needs. In core ways, SHAPE is a member organization and should provide tangible value to each member government. Whether serving as a clearinghouse for program or policy ideas in partnership with our developer community and our staff work group, or providing regular updates on grant opportunities, or building information sharing connections between member government staff, SHAPE will work to inform and support the work of our member governments and advocate for our mutual needs to be met. Next slide. And again, strategic priority 5, to build the infrastructure to strengthen our work. Next slide. After conversations with subgroup members, there was a recommendation to acknowledge SHAPE's 2022 realities. As you've noted already, I'm sure, we are in mid-May and we're talking about a 2022 annual work plan. That's because SHAPE's first staff member came on board just over 1 month ago. We have limited staff resources with a staff of only 1, and don't anticipate hiring an additional staff member until Q3 or Q4 of this year. Second, though the IGA does not require member government action for work plan implementation, the Executive Board acknowledged that trust and understanding is a critical component of the early stages of SHAPE's work, and wanted to make room prior to work plan approval to allow member governments the opportunity to receive a briefing on this work plan and provide feedback. I'd also like to thank University Place tonight. Your council is the first council to receive a briefing on this work plan. So thank you for your early feedback and review of this annual work plan. Third, there is a potential for opportunities to arise which may require our attention and action. This attention may set back our work plan deliverables. And fourth, the IGA requires an annual work plan. So our 2023 work plan will become part of SHAPE's workflow starting in Q3 of this year. So almost as soon as we approve this work plan, begin working on it, we'll start work on a 2023 work plan. Next slide. And finally, a timeline for implementation. The annual work plan will require Executive Board action to adopt. At SHAPE's Executive Board's upcoming June meeting, they'll receive a presentation on work plan deliverables and a timeline for those deliverables. At that meeting, the Executive Board will provide feedback and direction for the final version of the 22 work plan to be delivered and enacted via resolution at the Executive Board's July meeting. You'll note we are on step both 5 and 6 at the same time. So number 1, we're building out our tactics and timelines and deliverables, and 2, beginning to socialize with community and association groups our work plan timeline and priorities. These are groups like the Master Builders Association, the Tacoma Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, the Tacoma Pierce County Association of Realtors, and many more to gain feedback on work plan implementation. And I'd also like to note if there are recommendations from this council tonight on groups to work with to develop and to gain feedback on these priorities, SHAPE and myself would be happy to take those recommendations. Next slide. And as I close tonight, I'd like to thank Councilmember Kluski for the invitation, and I look forward to Council's feedback, questions, and comments this evening.
Well, Jason, thank you very much for the presentation. It was thorough and at the same time rather expedited, which we appreciate. Also, it's nice being first up. With that being first up, I think there's an opportunity for me to call on Councilmember Keel, who has his hand up on the screen. I'm looking for Councilmember Wood will follow Councilmember Keel.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And Jason, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very clear, and I appreciate the brevity that you used, but you also still filled in some good information. 2 things. One is you asked about other associations and groups to meet with and talk about this, and I would offer reaching out to Association of Washington Cities. As you noted earlier, I talked about that. They've been in this game many years and got a lot of experience with the state legislature and all the twists and turns that go along with this. And they also have a broad reach across the state about what others are doing, and then there could be a lot of research and things that you can find out from them. So if I have contact information for folks if you don't have that, but I just encourage you to do that. The second group is the association, the county association. Again, been doing a long time. Pierce County is a member there, and there are 38 other counties that are also doing that thing. And I think there's another wealth of breadth of information. The last thing I mentioned about that is that both the city association and the county association has been working together for many years, and I think that kind of would complete the circle for SHAPE, because you got 13 or 12 cities or whatever it is, 13 cities and a county, and then the Puyallup Tribe of Indians. So I think that will bring about some clarity. The second thing that I want and wonder if you guys can consider is that, and again, feeds with working with the cities and counties, is this whole notion around local control. I think what SHAPE does is that it's exactly what we're talking about, where cities and counties want to have local control about what they do with housing that meets the best need that they figured out for themselves. That's why SHAPE is there. And if the state takes away local control, I think that will hinder SHAPE tremendously. And so I'd invite SHAPE to join the discussion with us and with the legislature to make sure that we can maintain local control on this issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Just a quick response to that. Those are great recommendations. I was actually texting during this meeting earlier tonight with Carl Schrader from AWC, where we've been thought partners for years down in Olympia, and I've worked with Paul Jewell from Wasac for years. We had a great time redoing sort of the MFTE stuff a couple of sessions ago. But great recommendations, and we'll definitely be working with them on the front end and as we get into the legislative priority development later this year for SHAPE. So thank you for those. And I'm going to depend on you too for some connections, Council Member. You've got a breadth of knowledge that I do not have at this moment. So that's great. And on the local control issue, SHAPE, you noted it. I know the executive, when he came here last year to talk about joining SHAPE, noted it as well. SHAPE's goal is not to tell anybody what to do. We want to learn your plans for housing growth and how we can make those come to fruition faster and easier and at less expense to your city. So happy to bring our resources and level of our expertise to bear to help University Place and DuPont and Puyallup do what they want to do.
Very good. Thank you, Jason and Councilmember Keel. And I'm going to move to Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple comments. First, on your strategy 2B, continued learning. I like that. I think it needs to be clarified and not just learning what other jurisdictions around the country are doing, but there's starting to be a body of academic research on different housing policies. And because what I'm seeing right now is there's a lot of people with a lot of quote unquote good ideas, but with very little research to back up what works and what doesn't. And I think part of your continued learning needs to be starting to poke into that academic research to say what has a history of working and actually reducing housing costs or making more housing available in the low to middle income area. And second, on the timeline, I would just strongly encourage you to make sure your timeline matches the political environment around us. The next legislative session that begins next year, if your program needs to provide products or ideas or something prior to the start of that session, preferably several months prior, so that we have arguments, information, data, things that we can bring to our state legislative delegation to help them make what we hope is the right decisions. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood, and I appreciate that. And there are elements of the work plan that we will, some of the ongoing pieces, the legislative priorities being one, will be things that we will begin to roll out work on, and that'll be direct work with our member governments. Before we implement this work plan, some of those legislative priority issues will go out in survey form and conversation form with our member government. So, but point well taken that we have to speed this up quickly to get down to Olympia next year with some solutions for our legislative delegation.
Thank you, Jason. Very good. And I don't see any further, excuse me, Councilmember Fleming. Oh, excuse, if you want to, yeah, there we are.
We're still figuring this thing out here. I just want to say thank you so much for your presentation tonight, and the clarity you added to an abbreviated presentation was truly, and I don't say this to be sarcastic, but very much appreciated. The only question I have, looking at this schedule that you have, that's a highly ambitious schedule to complete your steps and get things done and get them in order. This is May. Oh, I just lost my screen. Drats. This is May, and you're looking at July having a finished product. How confident are you of actually meeting that deadline? And if not, what's the plan B?
So as we roll up these deliverables for the June board meeting, I think that's where the executive board is going to have some serious discussion around an evaluation of our time and what priorities we might be able to shed into a 2023 work plan. So it's hard for me to sit here today and exactly say what some of those pieces they might shed. I think there are some priorities that are sort of the top line pieces. Priority 1A, I feel like, is something that will have to be accomplished in year one because of executive board sort of prioritization on that. A number of these other elements, it's more designing how does SHAPE do its work. When we look at serving member needs and prioritizing and fulfilling those needs, those are pieces of how does SHAPE begin to develop processes to sort of better understand those needs and ascertain those needs, and then what resources can we bring to bear to assist. And whether that's those connections with member governments, whether that's support from some of our larger jurisdictions in sort of planning, public works, housing offices, sort of depends where our member governments needs see. So as far as me saying, am I confident today, if this was the work plan of these priorities for 2022, could we accomplish all of it? I think we would be stretched, to say the least. But the executive board, we did want to present the executive board with a sort of a full breadth of what that could look like in 2022 and allow them to sort of to pull back on some of those deliverables or even present them in a elongated timeline flowing into 2023 so that those pieces we would begin the work on them, but that deliverable timelines might extend into a future work plan for 2023.
All right, thank you again. And, oh, sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, there we go. Thank you so much for that explanation. The other question I had is, what would be your, as the executive director, expectation from the cities, such as University Place, in helping you accomplish this?
Tell me what you need. I'm happy to be a thought partner in some of these pieces. I know, without going into a conversation too deeply that we had, I met a couple of weeks ago with Councilmember McCluskey and your community development director, Kevin Brisky, I believe his name is, to just talk about SHAPE's role in working with the city of University Place. And Councilmember McCluskey was pretty clear to me. One of her priorities, or two of her priorities really are, how can we look at sort of better enhancing our usage of our 12-year multifamily tax exemption program to maybe include some more affordability? And that's where we build connections with the city of Tacoma, who's seen an explosion in recent years of the usage of that program. And the other piece that Councilmember McCluskey was focused on, and many of our member governments are focused on, are how does an aging population, potentially on a fixed income, continue to afford to live in place? One of your public commenters tonight noted the rising property tax rates, which we're all feeling. But as a fixed income population begins to experience those reverberations, how do we ensure that somebody can live in place and accessibly live in place if their households are going to require some modifications? So how do all of those things interplay? And so it's great, circling back around here, Councilmember, it's great when our member governments come and say, here's what we are focused on, here's what we need, here's what we want to get to. We might not know exactly how to get there, but how can SHAPE facilitate us getting to that end goal? So if you tell me what you need, I'll either tell you that I can't do it or I can't help. But more likely than not, I'm gonna work as hard as I can to find the answers to the solutions you're looking for.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Very good. Well, Jason, let me make a quick comment, and I think we'll get things wrapped up. My comment has more to do with funding, and certainly funding is a challenge and necessary at the same time. You need to have resources to be able to move the ball forward, and you've started an agency, or we have started an agency that has minimal funding, enough to get you to get the door open, but it doesn't get the job done. I think it's also, it's also my expectation that somehow we're going to get leveraging of the funds that the local governments have put in from external resources to help move the ball and get the job done. So just to comment a little bit about that isn't, I don't know where this council is in future funding at this moment, but I guess we see results and we see leveraging, there might be more and more reasons to consider more resources as a share. But we'll see how all that plays out. Nonetheless, thank you for your clarity and for helping us understand your work plan and listening to our comments. I appreciate that. Very good. I think we're kind of, and appreciate you hanging in there with us this evening too. I know we're off schedule some. So we're going to talk about that right now. Very good, Jason. Take care. All right. Let's see, Council. We have about 9 minutes left on the clock before we take an extension. We have an item in front of us that is probably more like 30 to 40 minutes. We have, if we're going to pass anything in the future, not tonight, but in the future on fireworks, we have to have it passed before July in order for it to be effective in 2023 July. So if we miss that July cutoff, it won't be effective until the following year, 2024. Just as a reminder, time's a little bit of an issue. We do have one meeting we could slip in the agenda, or we can extend the meeting. I'm open at that stage to hear a motion about either extending or moving the meeting, this item to the next meeting.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I believe that if it was, 15-minute conversation, I think that it would be all right to extend, 10 minutes or whatever. But if you're talking about 40 minutes, and it might even be longer, depends how we go with this, I believe it would be appropriate to move it to the next available agenda meeting so that we can, and have it so that we have the appropriate time to discuss it, is my motion.
Okay. Motion to move the meeting to the next available meeting, and just as a matter of clarifying, it will most likely not be the next regular meeting. That agenda is full. So it'll probably fall to the last meeting of June, the last opportunity for that item. So is there a second, any case, is there?
Councilmember Belisi seconds that one.
Okay, all right. So we're going to, all those in favor?
No, discussion.
Oh, discussion, excuse me, thank you. Councilmember Fleming? Oh, I'm working on it, I'm still.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do agree with Councilmember Figueroa's comment about this is an important topic, not just to the council, but to the city at large, and it really does deserve the time for an in-depth conversation and hopefully to reach some sort of an agreement that we can all live with at the end of the day. It's just an important topic, so I would certainly support this motion that's on the table.
Very good. Any other comments before we Councilmember Keel?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I am in agreement with moving it because of the time, and we want to make sure that we put a lot of time. The caution that I want to put on the table, and you mentioned it, but I do want to foot stomp it a bit, and that is the log jam of topics that happens when you push things back, right? And because the things that are down the road, they're on timelines as well, our budgets and things like that. And so it may be that one of those future meetings, we're going to have to extend a 30 or 40 minutes to get some of that done down the road. And so just I know you and Mayor Pro Tem are conscious of that. I just want to underscore it again.
Thank you for the reminder. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment on that is a follow-up is if it is the last time that we can meet and actually approve, because after that, if we approve it after that, then it's too late. So we would have to study it and then approve it. So we would have to have something ready for us to vote on. So how do we need to either study it and then move to come out of session to
The procedurally as to
Yeah.
how we
or we have it ready and then we discuss it during the council agenda thing. So it's something that we're going to have to do to make sure that we're not going to just study it that day, is that we would have to study it, discuss it, and approve it or disapprove it the very same night. And that being said, that may change if we want to move this to the next meeting or not. Okay.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Well, I think we can probably approve it anytime during the year. It just pushes back the timeline on when it gets enacted. And I would like to, especially since we're coming into some dry fire seasons, it's not going to be enacted this year. We'll have to wait another year. So there's a little bit of sense of urgency that we don't delay it beyond the year because of some of the local fire prevention criteria discussions that we have with the, in regards to outdoor burning and things like that in our driest season of the year. So my question is, if we push it back to the last meeting in June, how packed is that last meeting in June? I know the first meeting in June, it seems like it's packed per your comment. Would we be able to make it doable then?
I think it's possible, but I'm inclined. I really don't recall what the agenda is for the last meeting in June. I'm getting some nods from staff though, indicating there could be room. So
there's some room there. Okay, and I will be comfortable with that.
Okay, and then Councilmember Wood, I'm calling you in a moment, but I know that our city attorney has his hand up, and he may be able to add some information that'd be helpful. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to a couple additional comments. Council has studied this on a couple prior occasions, so this would not necessarily be a very quick piece. The good news for council is most of the stuff that's in your packet tonight would largely be a change the date and resubmission for one of those subsequent packets. So if there are changes or other comments that council has said, hey, we want this in the packet, let me know that separately offline so we can expedite that. But we would be, in theory, envisioning one further touch in light of some of those timing concerns that had been identified. It sounds like it's likely for that June 21st meeting, and then potentially scheduled for action. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that most of the materials, written materials, are already teed up.
Keep in mind that we're only, that will be a hybrid out of the AWC meeting. Okay.
Yes, and the Mayor Pro Tem is pointing out that several of us, many of us, frankly, are scheduled to be at the AWC meeting. We'll be in hybrid format for that. Okay, I think we've dealt enough with this, and I think we can now. I'm sorry, Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Please.
All I just wanted to say is I'm willing to do up to an additional 30 minutes tonight if that would be the best time to do it, but it doesn't seem like that's where we're going, so I'll leave that alone.
All right. So, I guess we'll just go to a voice vote for those in favor of moving this agenda item to the next available meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No. Opposed?
All right. That no would be the opposed, yes. So all right. But the motion passes, and we'll move the item to the next available meeting. With that, we're going to conclude our meeting for this evening, magically on time. So thank you all, and have a great couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mayor.